Okay, we're going to continue working with those rational numbers, and we're going to look at adding rational numbers today, and we're going to focus on fractions. So a couple of things to remind us. I know that we've been working with fractions since 5th grade, but they tend to be a skill that gives us a little trouble, and that's okay. We're just going to keep working on them. We always have to find a common denominator. Now, there are a couple of different ways to find a common denominator, but these are the two most common. The first that will always work is you can just simply multiply the two denominators that you have together. That'll always give you a common denominator. Sometimes that gets really, really big, and you might want to consider a different strategy. I almost always try to find the least common denominator, the smallest denominator possible when I'm working with fractions, because it just makes life easier. Now we are also going to be looking at our negatives. So we're going to bring back in those rules for adding and subtracting negatives and positives. So we need to remember that that skill is one we're going to use on a daily basis. So we're going to look at our fractions with negatives. So here's our first fraction. We have negative 1/3 and positive 5/8. So again, before we do anything else, we need to find that common denominator. We do not want to do anything before we worry about denominators, because we might not even know which fraction's bigger yet or thinking about the signs. So for this strategy, I'm looking at the denominators, and I'm going to find that common denominator by multiplying them together. So I'm going to get my two new fractions by multiplying them together, 3 times 8. So my first fraction, again, whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do the same thing to the numerator. So I'm going to multiply this by 8/8. And it's important that we write it this way, because this is like multiplying it by 1. 8/8 is the same as 1. And when we multiply something by 1, its value doesn't change. So this is mathematically accurate or mathematically correct. So 8 times -1 is -8. 8 times 3 is 24. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, how did I know the negative went with the 1 or the 3? Really, the fraction is a number. It's not two separate values, so the fraction is negative. So I wrote my negative in the numerator, but really, it's the entire fraction that's negative. So I could have written that. Oh, I'm having some fun. There we go. My computer was doing weird things. The negative could go out in front too, because the entire fraction's negative. All right, let's look at our second one. Again, I'm going to multiply this by 3. So 3/3, because 3/3 is the same as 1. So 5 times 3 is 15. 8 times 3 is 24. So this is what I wanted. I wanted those denominators to be the same. Okay, now I get to the actual addition part. Okay, now I wish I could just add them together, but I should see a big red flag, this negative. So now I'm thinking, oh my, I'm going to have to pay attention. So in my first fraction, my pink fraction is negative. My blue fraction is positive. So they have different signs. So now we're thinking back to those rules we learned in chapter 1. When the signs are different, we subtract. So we're going to be subtracting 15 and 8. So 15 minus 8 is 7. Then how do I know if my answer is positive or negative? Well, I think about it, which is bigger, 15 or 8? Remember, when I'm thinking about size, I just ignore the negative symbol. 15 is bigger, so that tells me my answer is positive. And then finally, whatever my denominator was, I bring that denominator straight over. Okay, so we're tying in our negative rules, we're tying in our fraction rules, we're tying in common denominators. So there's a lot going on in this problem that we want to be paying attention to. So you're going to do a lot of practice with addition or subtraction. It could be a subtraction problem. So let's try a subtraction problem next. All right, here we go. And I even threw in some variables. So notice that we've got a variable there. Don't freak out. They told you the value of the variable. So all we're going to do is plug that in right there, and then we'll solve the problem. So instead of t, I'm going to replace t with -5/6 minus 4/5. Okay. So before I do anything, I'm going to focus on common denominators. So 6 and 5, I'm going to find a common denominator by multiplying 6 times 5. So I'm going to start with my first fraction. I have a 6, so I'm going to multiply it by 5. Remember, whatever I multiply the denominator by, I need to multiply the numerator by. And I put these parentheses here so that we know this is multiplication. Otherwise, you might think you're subtracting and you might confuse yourself. So it's really important to always insert the correct symbols. So 5 times -5 is -25. 5 times 6 is 30. Okay, my next one, we are going to multiply 4/5 times 6/6. So 4 times 6 is 24. 5 times 6 is 30. And then don't forget about the subtraction sign. Now, if you think back to when we learned subtraction, we talked about a couple different things. We talked about really thinking of that subtraction sign as a symbol that tells us whether it's positive or negative. So if we look at our two terms, my pink term is negative. My blue term is also negative. So I've got negative and my pink term was negative. So they have the same sign. So the rule when the signs are the same is we keep the sign, so we keep the negative and we add. 25 plus 24 is 49. And then we keep the denominator. Now this is improper. You can technically leave it improper, or you can turn that into a mixed number, 1 and 19/30. But improper is fine too. Okay, so be really careful with your signs and with your common denominators when you're doing your practice.